2024, the Argentine government held 6,000 tons of food in a warehouse and sent its own lawyers to court to keep it there. The food had been bought and paid for. Outside, 1 million children were going to bed without dinner. At the end of 2023, prices rose faster than they had in 3 decades, more than 200% in a single year. One devaluation in December made the peso in your pocket worth a fraction of what it had been the week before. By the first half of 2024, more than half the country, almost 25 million people, were poor. In the worst-hit homes, UNICEF found, adults were skipping meals so the children could eat. This is a country that feeds the world. Beef and grain leave its ports for tables on every continent. The asado is its national pride. And yet, in the conurbano, the line forms at dusk for a ladle from the shared pot. The granary of the world, rationing soup. When the money runs out, the first thing a household loses is food, so people cook in common. In Argentina, it has a name: ollas populares, common pots, and comedores, and a scale. By one count, more than 40,000 registered kitchens, kept lit by around 140,000 people, 8 in 10 of them women, feeding something on the order of 10 million. This is not an Argentine custom. It is what people do when the state stops feeding them, and it has a name almost everywhere. In Peru, comedores populares. In Chile, ollas comunes, which spread under the dictatorship. In India, the Sikh langar, which has fed anyone who sits down for 500 years. In Sudan, takaya, and the neighborhood response rooms that cooked through a war. And not only in the poor world, Germany has its Tafeln, and in the United States, the Black Panthers were feeding school children breakfast in 1969, years before Washington made a free school breakfast permanent and national. The kitchen is the constant. What changes from one country to the next is the state, whether it lets the food reach the pot, and whether it pays the people who cook. That is the whole question in Argentina. This is not new. The pot is older than the crisis. It was forged in the hyperinflation of 1989, when prices rose nearly 5,000% and the shops were looted, and hardened in the collapse of 2001. For 35 years, every time the Argentine state has stepped back from feeding its people, the same infrastructure has switched on, run mostly by women, mostly for free. One of the voices of that infrastructure is a woman from a poor neighborhood in Santa Fe, Maria Claudia Albornoz, known as La Negra. She came up through a flood, lived in a tent in the plaza for half a year, and now speaks for a movement of the barrios. She has a phrase for what the cooking women are owed. Not a welfare plan, she says, a wage. In a kitchen in southern Buenos Aires, a 62-year-old named Eulelia Galeano serves 150 plates a day and pays for the gas herself, raffling off donations to keep the flame lit. It was hard before, she says. Now it's worse. Here is what made it worse, and it was a decision. In January 2024, the new government stopped sending food to the comedores. The reason it gave was that it was cutting out the middlemen, the managers of poverty, and auditing the kitchens to see which ones really existed. Its chief of staff told Congress that nearly half of them did not. That audit, the ministry later admitted, was effectively never carried out. And the whole time, the food was there. Almost 6 million kilos of it in 2 warehouses, more than half of it yerba mate, nearly 1 million kilos of powdered milk, some of it weeks from expiring. The state was not short of food. It was holding the food back from the hungry and calling that good governance. So someone took it to court. A social leader, Juan Grabois, filed a criminal complaint against the minister, Sandra Petivello, for failing to deliver food the budget had already paid for. A federal judge ordered the warehouses opened and the food distributed immediately. The government appealed and lost. Rather than hand out milk that was weeks from spoiling, it spent the state's own lawyers escalating the case all the way to the Supreme Court to avoid distributing it. The appeals court rejected that unanimously and ordered the ministry to pay the costs. Civil society forced the state's hand. The food was ordered out of the warehouse by a judge because the government would not do it on its own. And this is where the easy version of the story ends and the honest one begins. Because the women kept the pots running through all of it, and that is exactly the problem. Only about 1 in 4 of them is paid anything at all. The rest absorb the cost of a state that has withdrawn, for free, on top of their own jobs and their own families, 12 hours a day. When they feed 10 million people, they prove that the country can survive without a food policy, which is precisely the argument used to keep withdrawing one. The Argentine thinker Veronica Gago has a name for this: the handing down of the state's duty onto the unpaid labor of women, dressed up as community spirit. To praise their resilience without naming that is to help build the trap. There is a bill in the Argentine Congress written with the cooking women themselves that would simply recognize them as workers, a wage at the minimum, insurance, a pension. It would cost something like 0.07% of the country's economy. It has not passed. The real question was never whether a country this rich could feed its people. It's how a system decides that some of them can wait, and who that quietly serves. I can't answer that cleanly, not yet, but these things come into focus when more than one person is watching. I'll keep at it, one story at a time, and I'd be glad of the company.